and it shall be lifted up above the hills. And listen to this. And the peoples shall flow to it. That means more than just Israelites. In fact, it says many nations shall come. Many nations shall come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, sanctuary language here, worship language here, to the house of the God of Jacob, that He may teach us His ways and that we may walk in His paths. It almost sounds like from Micah's prophecy that the nations are going to become disciples of Jehovah. And listen to his explanation for why this is going to happen. He says, for out of Zion, remember, the mountain of God there in Jerusalem, out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord. And it's going to go out from Jerusalem. In this time when the nations become disciples of Jehovah, Micah is saying that the Word and the law of God is going to go out from Jerusalem. This should be ringing major bells with you right now. Okay? You hear the temple sanctuary language, the worship language that he's using there. Then most of you are familiar with Ezekiel's vision of the temple in Ezekiel chapter 47, beginning with verse 1, when the angel takes him in this vision and he brings the angel brings Ezekiel to the back door. He brought me to the back door of the temple, and Ezekiel says, behold, water was issuing from below the threshold of the temple toward the east. He's in the mountain of God in this vision. He's in the temple, and the back door of the temple. In the back door of the temple, there's water flowing out under that threshold, and it's flowing toward the east. And if you go and you read that prophecy, the angel takes him by the hand and leads him out into the flow of the water. And he says, to begin with, it's only ankle deep. But he said, we go out a little further and we measure a few rods out further, and then it's knee deep. And we go out a little further, and it's waist deep. And he said, then we go out a little further, and it's a massive river that cannot be passed. I wonder what that could be. This vast river that is flowing out from under the threshold of the temple of God. He says, for where, look at verse 9 of that chapter. He says, for where this water goes, he says, for this water goes there, that the waters of the sea may become fresh. So everything will live where the river goes. You think Ezekiel was having a vision of the proliferation of marine life, Jimmy? Not likely, is it? Not likely, is it? He says, for where this water goes, the waters of the sea will become fresh, and everything will live where the river goes. Guys, is this not an echo of the garden? And the river that flowed out of that garden dividing into 4 rivers, which mean increase, bursting forth, and rapid and fruitfulness. Do you see the parallelism there? This river is flowing out. And he goes on further and he says in verse 12 of this prophecy, this is an end-time temple prophecy, he says, and on the banks, on both sides of the river, there will grow all kinds of trees for food. Now, where have we seen this idea of trees before? We saw it in the temple. We saw it in the garden. And he's seeing it in the end-time temple. Okay? He says they will grow all kinds of trees for food, and their leaves will not wither, nor their fruit fail, but they will bear fresh fruit every month. Those are some odd trees. A tree that has a leaf, Ron, that never withers. And it bears fruit 12 months out of the year. It bears fruit, Don, literally all of the time. And look at why it bears fruit all of the time. Because the water for these trees flows from where? The sanctuary. Where does the water typically flow? But from the throne of God. This water that Ezekiel is seeing is water from the throne of God, watering trees that bear fruit year-round and whose leaves do not wither. And their fruit will be for food. And here's the kicker. And their leaves for healing. Now, where did you hear that this morning? Revelation chapter 2, verse 2. In John's vision of the heavenly city, there's the river and there's trees, and the leaves on these trees, John says, was for the healing of the nations. You see this? Is it starting to, the picture beginning to fill out here? Zechariah chapter 14, verse 8. He has a very similar vision. He says, on that day, living waters shall flow out from Jerusalem. And look at this, get this, don't miss this. Half of them are going to flow to the eastern sea, and half of them are going to flow to the western sea. That pretty much covers, if you go east and west, you've pretty much covered the whole earth, right? They're going to flow to the eastern sea, half of them are going to flow to the western sea, and it shall continue in summer as in winter. This flowing out of this water that Zechariah sees here is going to be unceasing. Summer, winter, springtime, harvest, it doesn't matter. This water is going to flow from sea to shining sea in terms that we would use. And look at the next verse. And the Lord will be king over all the earth. The Lord will have all power and all authority in the earth in that day. Should ring some bells. If it's not ringing yet, I'll get to it. And then, Habakkuk, or Habakkuk, depending on how you choose to pronounce that. Habakkuk says, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. I want to ask you something. In light of our understanding of the sanctuary features of Eden, the sanctuary features of the temple, I want to ask you this. Are these prophets talking about a physical temple? Are they talking about a physical river? Are they talking about physical trees bearing physical fruit whose physical leaves do not wither? I think it's quite clear that they're not. They are seeing a vision of something in the end of time that is very much temple related, but I don't believe it's physical at all. So let's sum up this section. The end-time temple visions of these latter prophets, and remembering that they draw very heavily from the sanctuary features of both Eden and the temple in Jerusalem, I believe that these are best understood in the context of the first advent of the Lord Jesus Christ, who is, by the way, referred to as the last what? Another Eden connection. I'm really just giving you the border pieces to what is a massive, massive scriptural puzzle But when you see the border pieces